What is the, okay.
Welcome everybody to a sharply divided city meeting, informational meeting or budget meeting, CIP meeting. I don't know what this gentleman on my right and your left has done, but he seems to be segregated. And this part of the room over here is weighted heavily with some very intelligent people. So thank you all for being here, and especially you people on Channel 16, and also the ones that are looking at us in any other manner or means. We're here today to call the budget hearing together for the City of Sioux Falls City Council on Tuesday, August 18th, 2015. Thank you all for being here, and we will proceed with Jill Franken, who will open it up with the Public Health Department. Jill.
Well, thank you very much. Again, I am Jill Franken. I'm the Health Director for the City of Sioux Falls, and it is indeed a pleasure to be here today. Been doing a lot of work over this last time period, which is far exceeding what you would expect. It always is when you're putting together an important budget to protect the public's health. So glad to be here, and we'll go ahead and get started. So the Health Department, in a brief overview, what do? We improve the quality of life, quite simply, for the residents. And we do that by mitigating adverse health conditions and threats. We do that by preventing and controlling disease. And we also do that by providing an open door to primary care for the residents of our community. So how did we carry out this mission, if you will, over this last year? I'll share a few examples of things that we accomplished. We accomplished a successful management of a transition of ambulance provider through an RFP process, and then transitioning for Paramedics Plus to be providing that service in our community. We also achieved level 3 patient-centered medical home recognition for Falls Community Health. We're one of but a few across the state clinics that have achieved that recognition. We've operationalized an important business plan for medical provider transition in our clinic, and we also launched a Live Well website and social media platforms. And we expanded Project Nice and Keep in 2014. It's now 4 square miles of space that we manage for Project Nice and Keep in our community, which is essentially doubled from, like, say, 2012. So our environmental division is heavily involved with the mitigation of adverse health conditions and threats, whether through restaurant inspections or mosquito control. Mitigation is accomplished. In particular, we have 2 measures that you see here related to nuisance complaints and violations. Our code enforcement team really relies very heavily on the residents of our community to alert us to nuisances in their neighborhoods, down the street, in their backyard, etc. And so we need to assure we are timely in responding to these complaints, because we consider them kind of part of our code enforcement team, if you will. We also know that the most effective code enforcement results in voluntary compliance of a case. When the property owner is made aware of the violations and an issue on their property, we've had great success in them taking care of the issue with a simple notice of violation. So to assure optimal ongoing prevention or control of disease in other capacities, we have numerous measures on the clinical side and on the health prevention side. And here are just a few of the over 20 measures plus that we have and that we track and trend on that side of the work that we do. Assuring good management of patients with diabetes is one of those measures. That 70% of our diabetic patients are in good control actually exceeds the state and national benchmarks. We also want to manage our patients who have hypertension and assure that they maintain a normal blood pressure, which is very essential for optimal health. And our success in that area is right in between the state and national reports that we receive. Another example is a newer measure related to healthy living, and that is to assure that we assist patients in our clinic with a health plan. This is a new measure in 2013. As you can see, we had growth in 2013 to 2014, and that 63% of our patients having a health plan very much exceeds the state and national benchmarking for this measure. So then we provide an open door to primary health services through myriad ways. We provide services to residents who have need for access to care. Whether providing a medical visit where we diagnose and treat that patient, newly diagnosed patient with diabetes, whether we provide and apply preventive sealants to a child in our school-based clinics, counsel someone with post-traumatic stress disorder, or screen someone who is at risk for a sexually transmitted disease, or case manage an uninsured homeless woman with a new diagnosis of breast cancer. We serve over 13,000 people each year that in some way, shape, or form fit one of those scenarios and many, many more. So on page 49 of your budget book, we detail the health department budget for 2016, which is $11.7 million for operations expense, as well as $0.1 million in CIP budget, for a total of $11.8 million to accomplish our mission, meet our goals and objectives, and carry out the needed programs and services for our community. The health department in multiple ways generates revenue to support the services that we provide. And in 2016, our estimated revenues include, you can see here on this pie that 53% or $6 million is generated through license, permit, and registration fees, as well as patient charges that are generated by our clinical team that sees patients every day. 29% or $3.2 million are from sources of federal, state, and local grant awards, as well as contracts such as from the state for HIV prevention services. 3%, or roughly $522,000, are contributions such as revenue we receive by adhering to our quality measures that we're accountable for, Medicaid Health Home work that we do in partnership with the state, as well as other contributions and revenue sources. What I also share with you each year is that the general fund impact and what that is, and that is estimated to be about 15% of our total revenue sources, or $2.6 million. Therefore, since that's 15%, it's obvious that 85% of all public health services we provide are supported through the fees that I described to you just a moment ago. So let's unpack this general fund impact, or this 15%. And see what kind of trend we have from 2015 to 2016. On page 50 of your budget book, you can see that for 2016, our general fund impact for the health center is projected to be $1.2 million, and for public health, it's projected to be $1.4 million. So of that total 11.7 operating budget that we have for 2016 projected, $2.6 million is supported through the general fund. The $0.1 million increase that you see on this slide is actually a rounding. It's actually $68,000 for that increase, which is only 0.6% of our total health operating budget for 2016. Okay, so now we're going to get to the meat of the matter and discuss the substantive changes to our health budget. To begin, I do have to take you back to that business plan for the providers and just give you a quick little update on where we landed with that. We very successfully operationalized that medical provider business plan in 2014 that you had approved for that 2014 budget. That business plan created a stronger provider team. It greatly enhanced our partnership with Center for Family Medicine and the residency program. And medical appointments, as we projected, increased from 24,000 in 2013 to over 25,000 in 2014. We fully achieved the productivity goals laid out in the business plan. I also believe quite strongly that it was directly related to the success of our recruiting our chief medical officer, Dr. Tingley, who had completed her residency at Falls Community Health. So overall, in balance, it was a highly successful strategic business plan implementation. So now let's talk about 2016 strategic business plan and the resulting changes to our budget. Let's start with the dental positions. We've reviewed trending in Sioux Falls. That's the first thing we do, is look at the trending or the need in our community. And what we found that affordable and accessible dental care remains in very high demand. We also assess our clinic data trends, and an example of that are the emergency dental patients that we serve each day. So we well exceed 10 emergency visits per day, exceed that easily, for patients who are not even our established patients of the clinic. They don't even have a dentist, but nevertheless, they present to our clinic with tooth pain, fever, swelling, and they need immediate attention. You know, we are at capacity with our dentists, but we know that if they don't get the services at our clinic, those emergency services, they are going to be served in the ED. They're going to be admitted to the hospital with, you know, infection that is overwhelming and things like that. So we know we need to be serving them, but we are at capacity, and it's becoming more and more challenging to do so. Our 3 dentists currently fit those emergencies between their regularly scheduled patients each day, and that is what is becoming the challenge. Next, we have confirmed that we are at full capacity with our current dental team. We actually trend all our providers' productivity monthly. Our dentist productivity well exceeds national benchmarks. So we track that. We do that for every one of our clinical staff. We have monthly meetings where we look at our reports and make sure that we're trending in the right direction. So then we explore all sources of sustaining revenue to support the programs that we want to be able to, any program that we want to add. Our federal partners actually recently expanded our ongoing federal grant to support this increase to our dental services. And this, along with patient fee revenues, supports this provider team. We also work with our boards, with our finance and human resources department to build the business case for these new positions, which has resulted in this recommended budget. So for the increase in the dental team, we will serve over 1,000 new patients with this plan and provide over 2,000 additional dental appointments. Accounting for that 4 FTE in expense, the offset in part-time that we have built in, and additional revenue, the net for this plan is actually a positive $19,000 to our budget. So that's the dental positions. Let's talk now about the health program coordinator position. For the health program coordinator position, we carried out the same steps that we did with the dental team, working with finance and human resources for this budget recommendation. So we completed community assessments. Some of you have even been part of that work. We quantified the need in our community and developed a strategic plan. Preventing chronic disease through population-based health or community-based strategies is a national as well as a local movement. And in the past 2 years, we've had significant success with the work of Live Well Sioux Falls. Examples include our Healthy Community Design Summits, our collaboration with parks and police for our tobacco-free youth recreation, as well as our subject matter expertise and assistance in developing the Complete Streets policy, which Mary Michaels presented to you at several recent council meetings. This body of work to date has been to date coordinated through temporary staffing as opposed to full-time staffing. The Health Program Coordinator FT will be responsible for our health promotion and chronic disease prevention through leadership, community partner engagement, interdepartmental collaboration in our city departments, assessment of emerging trends and evidence to more fully prevent and control disease in our community. The South Dakota Department of Health funding as well as grants and contributions support the health department's health promotion and disease prevention programs and initiatives, and there is also an offset in part-time wages with this plan. There is no net impact to the budget with this recommended FTE. Well, the remainder of this slide here is really just a few items that I can certainly answer questions for, but they're pretty straightforward. We have increases to our revolving technology charges. We have some increases to professional services for interpreter services and some grant writing that we want to accomplish, as well as repair and maintenance and utilities. So that, in a sense, that wraps up my presentation. It is short and sweet, as I think you have asked for. I really have to thank my entire team. You know, this year's budget was even more than usual a grassroots effort of starting with the staff, meeting with the staff, talking with them, and I do have to thank both the clinical and the public health team members who helped assist us in what we need to be thinking about with our 2016 budget. I have to thank Amy and Alicia and the other management team, Lana specifically as well, and then also our finance and human resources team that we worked many, many hours in developing the strategies that we need to positively affect the health of our community and get this budget to support that work. So thank you for your attention, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there questions for Jill? Councilor Jameson?
Thank you, Jill. The dentist positions. I wrote a note. You had 10 emergency dental every year.
Every day.
Every day there's 10 emergency.
That's a conservative estimate as well. So it's not unusual for me to go up in the afternoon and find out that there had been 17 emergencies in a morning that our dentists had dealt with. That is actually not an unusual scenario. So.
But could the 2 that you have now, right?
3.
3 that you have now, fit them in between patients? And,
yes.
And if they couldn't, because they're booked and just overwhelmed, where do they go? They go to the hospital?
They would probably go to the emergency room. And if they didn't do that and their fever, infection, etc., got to a point that they'd probably need hospitalization, those would be the 2 likely scenarios for an otherwise preventable occurrence. So.
And if you could, an emergency is what?
So someone who perhaps cracked a tooth a while back and now has developed an abscess, an infection of that, they might have some gum disease and they might have now resulted, most of them are resulting in either pain from that root being somehow affected of the tooth or an infection causing fever, pain, and swelling.
One last one, I'll leave you
Sure.
alone on the, if they were to go to the hospital, get somehow treated there, who would pay then for these same individuals? Who would wind up paying those hospitals?
The patient would be responsible to pay, and most of them are uninsured for dental services, and so and their medical insurance doesn't cover that, and so they would end up being accountable for that bill. And that would just go through that normal course that folks who are uninsured, when they end up needing hospital services or ER services, having to deal with that in addition to all the other weighty issues they have managing all their bills and responsibilities.
And it was 2 dentists that you were looking for, right?
1 dentist,
1 dentist.
1 hygienist, and 2 dental assistants.
Thank you.
That's kind of a complement of a dental team. So.
Like, yeah. Nothing on this side? Mr. Kiley?
Thank you. Jill and staff, congratulations on your increase in productivity. That's great. I mean, it shows that you not only predicted the outcome of the changes, but you met that prediction. So good job.
Thank you.
Well done. I mean,
Thank
our
you.
citizens are the ones that are the benefactors in a situation like that.
Thank you.
Just a quick question regarding the rentals, the revolving technology rentals. Can you explain that a little bit? And is there an advantage to the rentals versus purchase? For instance, technology is continually changing, so is it better to go through a rental process versus a purchase process? And then also, is there a maintenance plan that usually goes along with those rentals?
Sure. And if I get a tap on the shoulder from Amy, that's because she can more fully explain this than me. But it is the city appropriates, they quantify the IT technology that we are needing to have as a resource, and then they build in a revolving fund for replacement of that technology, whether it be the hardware. It's mostly the hardware piece of it. And so that's what's included in this budget for when they call it rentals. It's the Is that correct? I'm not going to tap on my shoulder. I'm going to let Amy come up and explain that.
Amy Richardson, the Finance and Information Officer for the Health Department. The rentals include, just like Jill said, the city's IT revolving fund, so hardware and software for basic computer needs, as well as the software the city uses for Munis and Intergov. We pay for a portion of that through the Health Department. So.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Karski.
Joe, without going into great detail now, but how many years have you been public health director?
5 years.
5 years. What did your budget start at 5 years ago? Do you remember?
That's a good question. I want to say it was probably around, I'm going to say it was probably around 8 million.
8 million?
Amy?
Okay, we're at 11.7 this year. Most of that has come from the professional services that have been added over time. Why has that evolved so much? What would you attribute that to?
The bulk of that has been on our clinical side. And to give you a quick answer, and I could certainly give you more detail in a follow-up communication, which we'd be happy to do. The Affordable Care Act and health reform in general really did, align the fact that community health centers are a critical structure for being able to serve the new needs of people who are becoming insured in our states, across our states. And so there has been a tremendous investment in both capital and operating for community health centers to make sure that we're ready for that. And so that's some of the work that we've been able to demonstrate that need even absent Medicaid expansion in our state yet. But we have had some, expansion of insurance in our state and in our community specifically. So being ready for all of that is some of what they have had grant funding to support, but we've also been able to even support current need, which has led over the years to those increases. That primarily started around 2009. Some of that was the ARA dollars, the Reinvestment Act dollars, Recovery and Reinvestment Act dollars, as well as then through health reform.
So to summarize it, the Affordable Care Act has really put more burden on the municipality, the city, for health care to a portion of our population?
Perhaps you could look at it in our case specifically, but whether you're a municipality, health center, or a standalone nonprofit health center, the aim was to look at ways that we can support that work to meet the needs of the community. Yeah.
Because before that, the county really was the one responsible for indigent care and that type of thing. Have we been transferring some of that to the city by this?
We stay pretty clear about our work and our roles and responsibilities. And so, for example, when I talk about things like a homeless health care program, what we provide is the health care and the medical case management for those patients that are homeless. We don't provide all that social support and other services that are really essential in things like housing and getting, and becoming employed and becoming then more productive citizen of the community. Those are things that are provided through other means, and the county has quite a responsibility. In addition, we don't then also serve any of those patients' health care needs beyond that primary care. We have a specific focus and a specific accountability for a set of patients in our community. They also go to the hospital, like I indicated, for something like tooth pain, but for many, many other reasons as well. We try and keep them out of the hospital through the care we provide, but there are still county resources being used for patients who are hospitalized, and they help assist to the degree that they can and it's requested for those services as well.
And just thank you and thank the rest of the council for indulging me while I don't drill real deep down into the nuts and bolts of it, but more of a higher level view of where we are and where we've been and kind of where we're going. So
Sure.
thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions for Jill? Yes.
Just a follow-up question to Councilor Karski's. So 5 years ago, when you took over as director, can you compare our ability to meet the needs of our city and citizens now compared to 5 years ago when you?
Oh, absolutely. You know, when I look at what we were doing 5 years ago for, I have a specific memory in my mind for dental, for example, is the number of, you know, we'd see 5 years ago probably about 5,000 visits for dental services a year. We're now at well over 9,000. So that's just an example of how we've been able to increase the need. You know, we do also, that's the reason you see us talk so much about the general fund impact, is we keep a close eye on making sure that we're not creeping too high into that on the clinical side. So we really monitor that, and we really look for maximizing all our opportunity to get our revenue as high as possible to cover the expense on the clinical side. So.
Okay, and obviously in the last 5 years, I mean, a conservative estimate would be an increase in our population here of 10,000 up to 15,000 or more. Mm-hmm. So that would have another huge impact on your abilities to do your job.
Yeah, you know, we get a cross-section of demographic every time we have a population growth every year. And with that comes an increased need for resources and services across not just our dental clinic, but all our services in our community.
Jill, I just want to say one quick thing, and that is, again, a big thank you to you and the people that did the selection on the ambulance service. Job well done, and seems to be working out very well, so thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, you may take your staff and go to work.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mr. Cotter,
Yes.
you are next.
All right, thank you. All right, good afternoon, Council. Thanks for having us today. I'd first like to say a special recognition to the finance team. They've done an enormous amount of work with us in developing this, along with human resources. This budget includes 5 additional positions, 2 in fleet and 3 in storm sewer, and human resources, a key partner in justifying those positions. Your Public Works Management team is here, and just as we get started, this budget today, when we combine both our general fund divisions and the enterprise fund divisions, it's $191.6 million. You have about 310 full-time individuals in Public Works that work for you every day, and about at any given time throughout the course of the year, about 60 part-time employees. Let's get started. So the key roles of Public Works: plan, design, maintain the public's infrastructure in the public's right-of-way, deliver fresh drinking water, collect and treat the wastewater, build out and maintain the storm drainage system, deliver the power to the customers in the defined territory, along with maintain the streetlight system, operate the regional landfill and household hazardous waste facility, and provide leadership in environmental and sustainable matters in the city, in the region, and the state. I know Councilor Kenny Anderson Jr. is not here today, but he often asks us about what steps we're taking with environmental matters, and just wanted to highlight a couple of those that you won't see in the presentation, but critical work that this management team undertakes throughout the course of the year. First, in wastewater, many of you know that we generate a substantial amount of our electricity from biogas as wastewater is treated. We've also completed studies this year in food waste, fats, oils, and grease, and essentially food waste. And when a business case is justified, we have put some of those business cases in the capital plan to allow us to add those at the wastewater plant and ultimately generate more electricity. Water is utilizing variable frequency drives. We're leveraging Lewis and Clark's water system, which they come in at a higher elevation, which allows it to flow into our system. We reduce our pumping costs, treatment costs, and chemical costs. We manage our peak loads and maximize using our energy in off-peak times. Many of our facilities have had hundreds of light retrofits, and along with occupancy sensors when we walk in the facilities or walk out. And also the environmental and sustainability team you've heard recently with water conservation programs and the streetlight team with the LED streetlight power pilot projects. All right, the first section of our budget involves the general fund aspects, and that's the street maintenance, storm drainage, snow removal, and engineering. The overview of that budget is really to provide safe and drivable streets. Not only is there a focus in a mature city to focus on your existing streets, but we're growing, and so you also have to efficiently plan and construct those new streets, operate safe and efficient traffic control system, and appropriately map what's above and below ground. The next section is rating of our streets, and this is really a key tool that we've used over time, but we're really going to take it to the next level. Later this month, early September, we'll be bringing in the sophisticated vans to not only rate the condition of our streets, but rate the rideability. We're looking forward to having increased accuracy, eliminating the subjectivity, and really getting a much better turnaround of the results. This is a key tool that will allow us to really target and prioritize street maintenance activities. Your 2016 plan for street maintenance, here's some highlights. There'll be 250 blocks that are milled and overlaid, 400 blocks that will receive a surface treatment, 15 blocks that will have concrete joint and spall repair, and 15 neighborhood blocks that will be reconstructed. A couple pictures there with the paving team paving on a mill and overlay, and then a microsurfacing is off to the right. Microsurfacing, this is our 6th year utilizing that treatment in the city. Our customers like it, and we're extremely happy with the results that we're getting. It's really armoring our streets and giving us much better results than the chip seals did. All right, this is just a this is a bonus for you to see a picture of a neighborhood that was just recently milled and overlaid. Galen Huber just went up in a hot air balloon, and this is the things Public Works people do, is we take pictures of neighborhoods that got improved. So
Did we pay for that?
No, this is a compliment of Galen Huber, but it is, the Public Works team does affect the neighborhoods every day by delivering water and collecting the wastewater, managing storm drainage like we've done the last few days, but also making lasting impacts on when we make these roadway investments into the neighborhoods. All right, our next two slides speak to the snow removal program. The first really just gives you a capture of what the snow removal program is, and then we did develop a slide to give you kind of a look back on what the first citywide implementation of snow gates was. So this is, the snow removal program has to be developed to manage over 3,000 lane miles. We staff 24/7 starting November 1st through March of 31st. Every time we go into a major snow event that requires plowing out the city, it's 100 city employees every 12 hours. We also have other departments that are huge partners to us, like parks and fire, community development, police. There's 43 motor graders that the city runs, 45 standards, and then we bring in 23 partners of contractors, and there's 38 snow gates that are used citywide. All right, just a quick look back on what the 2014-2015 season has been. We plowed out the neighborhoods 4 times, once in November, once in December, once in January, once in February. Financials to date on the snow removal budget are we're right at 50% of budget spent, so we feel good going into the fall. That's a good place to be. We did lease 6 additional motor graders. When you see the type of growth that happens in our city with all the large box stores and apartments, those contractors, we are also vying against the contractors doing that work as well. And so just with the growth of the city, we did lose 6 private leased motor graders, and so we leased 6 additional ones to make that up so we can still deliver good service. That was $110,000. We've now put that into the budget for 2016 to make sure that we've budgeted for that. And the other recognition was that we didn't plan for in our original pilot of snow gates, but was recognized that once we actually received the motor graders on October 15th, we have had snow events in early November. We wanted to make sure that we were prepared. And so just to make sure we could accomplish mounting all those snow gates in a short period of time, we did outsource a part of that work. And that work for installation and removal was $80,000. We've since now budgeted for that going forward so we can continue to use those partners. All right, highways and streets, overall budget. Again, this is operational and capital dollars that get invested into the streets, snow removal, engineering, and storm drainage of just under $72 million. This slide gives you a breakdown of those financials. The top half of the slide really speaks to the operational costs. And so if you come down to the fourth line, it says total general fund, highways and streets. The 2015 budget was $24.7 million. The proposed 2016 budget is $25.8 million. It's an increase of $1.1 million, and we'll break that down. If you go to the lowest line, the total highways and streets, the 2015 budget compared to the 2016 has a request of $11.2 million increase. 90% of this is for additional capital investment. And those are the 2 lines right above. $3.8 million in more storm drainage investment and $6.3 in capital investment and in our roadways. All right, there's a lot of numbers on this sheet, and so just again, this is the smaller part of the increase for highways and streets. But essentially, starting with the original 2015 budget of $24.7 million, the key factors that affected our budget in engineering, street maintenance, and snow removal are listed. All of these also have the normal wage and COLA increases that have been put in. I'll probably just highlight, say, one from each. In engineering, signal controllers, one of the most important things we do every day is manage traffic and move traffic efficiently. And Heath, the traffic engineer, has brought forward a proposal that we've got some signal controllers that are today obsolete. So if a signal controller goes out, we need to go out and swap it out right away. And so this will allow us an additional $91,000 to start more progressively changing out those signal controllers. So within, I think, about 5 years, they'll all be the new style. So that's been a key part of our budget that we're bringing forward. Street maintenance, we're seeing more and more guardrail repair accidents happening. In the past, we've just looked within our budget to find those dollars when a guardrail does get hit. It's too important, so we have started to dedicate some funding toward guardrail. We are seeing a street light electric rate adjustment that's being brought forward from the various electric providers that we buy electricity for to light the streets, and that has a impact on our budget of about $282,000. And then we did just get done talking about some of those additional costs we've seen with snow removal that we've now started to factor into our budget. All right, storm drainage, just a bit of perspective in 2014. This was really the one utility that was outside of water, wastewater, landfill, and lights over time that we took the time to actually write a detailed rate analysis in 2014. Your support for a 3-year increase of 9% each year is really starting to write the financial state of this utility good. And so that now has been implemented for the first full year. As a part of that rate analysis, we had a dedicated sewer crew to be added so we could start to dedicate more energy toward work orders that are needed in this system. Short perspective on the size of your storm drainage system is there's 410 miles of pipe. There's 22,000 different structures. There's about 13,000 storm intakes. There's about 185 properties. And essentially today, as if a work order comes up on the storm sewer system, we have one crew that addresses work orders for the sanitary sewer system and the storm sewer system. And our work orders are building up significantly in the sanitary and only allows us to be really reactionary toward the storm sewer. And so raising the rates was the first step. Now the next step is to add a crew. This would add 3 full-time people and 2 part-time people to really have a dedicated crew so we can start to proactively manage our storm drainage system. When you go out there and you'll see a cone near an intake and you'll see a sinkhole, those are things that we want to get ahead of. We outsource a lot of intake work right now. We've got some really good contractors in this city that can efficiently go in, take out an intake and replace it, and we've really ramped that up over the course of the last 3 years. But we still need a crew out there dedicated to jetting, identifying work orders, and then ultimately getting them scheduled to be done. And so this is 3 of our 5 requests for new positions in 2016. Highways and Streets Capital Plan. We often talk about our major programs, from rehabilitating our asphalt pavements, concrete pavements, addressing arterial street intersections, managing our bridges, reconstructing our major streets, investing in downtown, removing barriers for accessibility improvements, and being prepared for annexation infrastructure as neighborhoods are annexed. Our key flagship projects that are really lined up for 2016 are listed. I've got some pictures that better address those. So the first is the 12th Street Bridge. We've talked a lot about this project. In hindsight, it's worked out very well to actually split this in 2 projects. There's a lot of work needed to relocate utilities, build retaining walls, remove trees, build roads to this bridge. And so in hindsight, splitting this project in 2 has been a real win, just to really, I think, allow us to predict a much better project in 2016 when we'll replace the bridge. This is Maple Street, so this is up by Southeast Tech, out by Career Avenue, and this project, this widens basically a 2-lane county road to a full urban road. This will take us out close to George McGovern Middle School. If you recall, out near the school, we did widen that to a 3-lane facility to make sure the left turners going into that facility are good. We're also working closely with the school on the pedestrian facilities to get them to this road and safely. This is Sycamore Avenue, south of 57th Street and north of 69th Street. Last year, this is a high growth area as the City of Sioux Falls opened up essentially the whole east side, probably 10, 11 years ago, and really started to open up that first 10,000 acres of what ultimately will open up about 25,000 acres of new developable land. These areas are really starting to develop and take off, and so Sycamore Avenue is a gravel road. Last year we graded it, put all the utilities in, and as you drive out today, you see basically everything but the pavement. And so this will be the paving package that would go in next year to support this neighborhood growth. This is just south of there, so there's a new Harrisburg school getting built just next to Bonson Avenue. This would be the same approach we take on 69th Street, so this is just east of Southeastern Avenue, the roundabout out by Sioux Falls Christian. And this would, first we would do the grading and utility work in 2015 and then do a surfacing package and ultimately loop the water mains on Sycamore next year. This is Foundation Park. This is an item on your council agenda tonight, but essentially the community's investment will be initially, as you see that horseshoe of roads that have been laid out that will connect with Marion Road, There'll be a grading and a street paving project that'll go about where the green line is. A water main will be extended from the interstate up to that portion. Those roads will go in, be installed by the Development Foundation. They're already having great success with their land, and so there's going to be much more to talk about with Foundation Park. And then last, we've also in our capital plan have the lift station, force main, and other sewer extensions essential that are needed to open up this park from a sewer standpoint. All right, that gives you a picture of the general fund divisions, and now we'll take you through our enterprise funds. Just first and foremost, your support to really right-size these financials that really started about 9 years ago has made these utilities financially strong. Each of them have met their reserve targets and have the resources to invest in infrastructure at the rate, a responsible rate that we need to. These capital plans are very proactive, and we're highly regulated by state and federal agencies. The slide that you won't see in here that is a part of the city attorney's budget, but it's a key resource that Public Works is asking for, is that you've all met and seen the good work of Diane Best. Diane Best has made such an impact already in Public Works and the number of issues that she's been able to really focus on and assist the team. In any given year, we'll execute just over 800 agreements. There's about 3 ordinance changes that she just told us about at leadership this last week. That is an ongoing process with having 52,000 water and wastewater customers, subdivision compliance agreements to manage, and damage to public property that happens frequently. Having a good legal team dedicated to those issues is critical. And so we are asking for your support of a paralegal to assist Diane, and Public Works is providing the funding for that. Okay. All right, the enterprise budget's breakdown is $119.9 million, and some responsible budgets that we'll walk you through. First is electric light. Electric light really has 2 key functions. They have a defined territory where they deliver power. We get power from off the dams on the Missouri River, but we also buy supplemental power from Heartland to deliver electricity to our municipal power customers. The largest customer is the water plant, so ultimately everyone in the city benefits from us having a municipal power team. And then secondly, they provide the lighting of all the public streets and maintain those for vehicles and safe pedestrian traffic. Breakdown of their budget, and we normally spend a lot of time with this on our rate reviews, so I'll just go through them quickly, but we're here to answer your questions. Light and Power team has a budget of $9.3 million. Personnel, other operating, and capital are really the 3 primary buckets. The key cost in this utility is to buy that power and then ultimately resell it. And so that line item of $6.8 million, the majority of that is to actually buy the power from Western Area Power Administration and Heartland Power to ultimately resell it to our customers. Just a snapshot of some key capital investments that will be made. Circuit improvements. The north transmission lines that feed the substation are about 30 years old. They've lived through their useful life, so there'll be circuit improvements that are planned. In 2016, continuing to try to advance customer service, changing out that meter socket that right now if we get a new turn on or turn off for a customer, we have to physically go out and make that switch out. Our new meter sockets that we put on would allow us to do automatic meter reading, but also just from the stroke of a keyboard, turn customers on and off. So that'd be a huge improvement from a service standpoint. And then an electrical system is a mechanical system. It breaks. You don't know exactly where it's going to break, and so we have to have a capital line item for unforeseen electrical system replacement and be able to react as needed. Landfill, Dustin Hansen is here. He's been named our landfill superintendent and has put together a responsible capital budget to guide 2016. The landfill provides cost-effective and environmentally sound disposal of municipal solid waste and construction demolition debris for the 5-county area for today and into the future. We continue to improve and focus on sustainability with trying to bury less and recycle more, and continue to pursue innovative use of landfill byproducts. We've had recent where we'll take some of the tires that come into landfill, have them ground, and they actually get used for the bedding around our leachate collection pipes in lieu of using like a natural resource like P-rock or something like that. So always looking for ways to reuse at the landfill. Landfill budget, page 109, $9.1 million, and is broke down there accordingly from personnel, other operating, capital, and debt. I will tell you that we don't have much debt in this utility. We've got 2 small loans that add up to about $1.5 million. We are working with the state. We have the resources to pay those off early, and if we can do that, we'd like to. This would allow the electric, light, and power and landfill to essentially be debt-free, and that's something that we're working toward. Snapshot of their key projects: leachate recycling, recirculation, infrastructure. Essentially, as we fill up a cell, we've got to make sure we put those appropriate collection and recirculation pipes in. We always budget for land acquisition to increase the buffer space around the landfill as opportune land acquisitions come up. And in 2016, we'll kick off a major effort to write a new solid waste master plan to really have a good perspective of what the next 10 to 15 years look like. We've got to be looking out. This is the landfill for the 5-county region, and we'll have to be looking at population projections for all the towns in the area, along with what technologies are potentially appropriate for us to consider to, again, maximize our airspace at the landfill. Water. Water has spent recent years investing in their team. That picture in the lower left is a picture of a remodel that was done to their maintenance facility. That facility we've occupied since really the 1960s and have done minimal improvements to it over time. It's been updated for a state-of-the-art facility for our teams. This is the team that if a water main breaks in any given moment of the year, they respond, whether it's on a holiday or not, whether it's raining or snowing, to restore service to their customers. And so we're pleased to bring that on board for their team. This water fund is sound, and again, with your support over the last really 9 years of getting the rates where they need to be, has met its reserve target and is well positioned into the future. Still focusing on water conservation, and one of the things that we know is Councilor Rolfing has asked for is where's really our next source of water, and I've got a slide to share some of the activities that we're doing. Water capital budget is $39 million. It's broken down appropriately with the personnel, other operating, capital, and debt. Still working on their significant debt of paying off Lewis and Clark. And just a snapshot of where the key capital gets invested. About 3 years ago, we quadrupled the amount of dollars that get invested into our neighborhood water mains, so we can, Greg and his team have really started to target the age of those facilities are, where those segments are that are seeing 1 break, 2 breaks. In some cases, where we're at downtown right now on Franklin, had 6 water main breaks in 1 block. We want to make sure that we have the resources to make those changes. And so we've got much more resources now to react and make those investments. The center picture is really kind of the interstate highway system of how we get water from the plant or our Lewis and Clark connections to our neighborhoods. So just a picture of some large piping and valving. And then the last before we build the next 2 collector wells in the well field, the AEM, this Airborne Electromagnetic Survey, you may have seen on some of the national stories as they've mapped out California's drought condition and really the issues now that they've seen with 4 years of drought, and they can model what those soils or the water-bearing soils are doing over the last 4 years of being in a drought situation. This is that same technology. It's the most advanced technology you can use. This fall we'll fly. This is a partnership with USGS. This year we'll fly our well field from the airport up to Del Rapids, calibrate it, and be able to have a model that really understands what that soil is doing about 900 feet under the surface, and with successive years of drought, where is the best place to put that next well. And so we've got 2 wells in the capital plan because there is more water we could harvest out of that aquifer. We want to make sure we're making the right choice, and so we're really excited. This is the cutting edge technology. It's been used in the oil and gas business for many years, and the mining business, and it's just starting to come into the water resources business. Water reclamation. Still making a lot of investment into the water reclamation side. The water reclamation budget, $62.4 million. This budget's increased significantly from a capital standpoint from last year to this year, really on 2 projects, Foundation Park and the outfall sewer. Both have been able to be fit into the outfall has been fit into our rate model over time. We are fitting in the Foundation Park and can absorb that. We still, as you guys know, have rate increases ahead of us for this utility, but they're at closer to inflationary amounts. Some pictures and some key capital investments that'll be made. The first picture on the left is Foundation Park. The next one is really building and system improvements, along with writing a master plan in 2016 that looks at the plant and the whole collection system for the next 10 to 15 years. And then we showed a picture of one of the digesters, the new roof that's being taken off, and a new roof that's being put on. Starting to reinvest into the plant. It was built in the early 80s, and it's a very caustic environment, and so you've got to get proactive to stay ahead of those needs. Last division is fleet. Fleet's a very highly qualified, highly certified team of individuals. Over the last year, the police team has brought their 135 vehicles into the fleet team to, again, continue to centralize fleet. This team operates 4 fueling sites across the city, and they do the maintenance and the planned replacement for over 625 pieces of rolling stock. We've talked over the year about the fleet study and really how do we take fleet to the next level. There's an incredible investment that our community has made into fleet, and we want to make sure that we're analyzing that equipment appropriately and making good, sound judgments. We did a request for proposals to bring in a fleet consultant. We got the best in the industry, which is Mercury. They're out of Maryland. They've advised hundreds of private, state, and federal fleets. They really came in and focused on those 6 areas: organization, software, KPIs, centralization, utilization of your vehicles, and the facilities. And this is an incremental implementation, but really having the first 2 things we've got to focus on is the organizational structure and software. And so within a week, our request for proposals will hit the streets to really start to solicit best-of-breed software similar to what we have in our water and utility division. We want the same for our fleet so we can have a really good tool to manage that fleet system. And then second, we've got to have a management team that actually is analyzing that data and is appropriately planning for the needs of fleet. And so we do have 2 new positions that have been requested. The first is a peer to Jeff Layton. Jeff Layton today is an excellent equipment repair supervisor. He has 2 leads under him. His entire team that he has under him is 22 individuals. When we go into snow removal, that operation complements the street team, and they're running 24 hours a day, keeping us running. It's a lot of work for one individual. And so we recognize that before the fleet study that we really need more resources for Jeff. So the one position request would be a peer to Jeff to be, so we can kind of split up that span of control, reduce him down from not having 22 employees to report to, but also as we centralize and we look at inventories and parts across the city, that we just have more management on that. And then above that is to actually put in place a top-of-line fleet manager, really take this team from a fleet maintenance team up to a fleet management team. And so those become the second of the next 2 of our positions that we're requesting. The fleet budget is $9 million. It's broken down in personnel, other operating, but the substantial part of this is investing in equipment, $5.6 million. Thank you for staying with us. That's the Public Works budget. Our team is here. We'd love to answer your questions.
Questions? Yes, Councilor Jameson.
Mark, on the motor graders or snow removal equipment, the $80,000 for installing the snow gates and the 6 additional leased motor graders, I had a slight conversation with Galen a little bit about at some point it's got to get tipped over to purchasing motor graders versus leasing them, and if you could avoid that $80,000, I would think you got to be getting close. Where is that tipping point? We start purchasing versus leasing.
Well, I'll tell you, it's the cost of equipment has really skyrocketed. I'll just give you a perspective. What we typically see, I think we ran the financials the other day of what's it actually cost us to lease a motor grader. And this last year, there's a fixed amount per month, and then there's so much per hour. And that ran out with about 111 operating hours of one motor grader was about $17,000, okay, for the year. Well, a new motor grader, I think, is north of $350,000. Is that fair? You guys looked at that? Yeah, so I think we start to look at that out, and you're going to have so much equipment sitting around from a lack of use standpoint. Honestly, it's also a good partnership, I think, between public and private, is that these motor graders come into town, and we take about $17,000 off of them. That's what they charge us from a monthly rental rate and a usage, if we use them about 111 hours. But then I assume there's discounts that we get that potentially when they go to then resell them, you'll see a lot of the private contractors begin to buy those, and so and they can run them year round. We're not going to keep over 30 motor graders run year round. So I know what you're saying. We've had the same thought, and so once we started to dig into it, it would be multiples of millions to buy this equipment, and then ultimately it would be sitting around and really wearing out from lack of use. And so we still think the best way is to try to partner as much as we can with the private contractors, but then lease for $17,000 to about $20,000 a year per machine.
Okay, and as well, what is a guardrail repair?
So anytime there's a hazard, maybe the most visible one that was damaged this last year that Galen and his team had to fix is if you're on 57th Street and if you're approaching the tunnel between Western and Louise, that center pier that holds up the 229 structures, there's a guardrail or a kind of a crash protection device. Well, somebody spins out of control, hits some ice, or gets in an accident, hits that, then we've got to go out and replace it. Now, our first objective is that police will write a ticket because it'll get called in. We do go after their insurance company. Insurance companies pay for that. If they hit street lights, the light team has to address a lot of street lights that get hit in the winter months. But these guardrails, the other thing a guardrail is if you drive along a road like along Rice Street, and it's a rural section road, so there's not a curb, so a driver could naturally hit it and go, if they were either dozing off or something. On rural section roads, you'll see a lot more guardrail because you can essentially have a driver that goes to sleep and then just drive right off the road. Well, the reason you put up guardrail is if there's a non-yielding factor, like if there's a box culvert down below. You don't want someone to go off the road and hit it and probably have a fatality. So they hit guardrail, and it essentially is just there to catch them, and so they don't hit that non-yielding object. And so we've got a lot of them. The state had, I think at one time, they have on-call contracts, and at one time they had like 14 guardrail hits on 229 in like a 2-week period. And so it's expensive, and then you're out there in the frozen ground trying to replace them. So it's a factor.
I could two
Okay,
quick
one
questions. One is the traffic control replacement program. Does that have any impact or effect on those automated traffic signal systems that are getting installed on 41st in Minnesota? Is that any connection to that?
Not necessarily. These are, that project's going forward, and that project's actually getting a little bit bigger. We're working with the DOT. The DOT ultimately came to Heath and Chad and said, maybe it's better for us to actually join the Minnesota and 41st projects. And so that probably is due for an update to you to give you an update on where that's at. But this is essentially throughout the system. We have about 260 traffic signalized intersections, and the brains in those controllers. It's just like anything. If you have an old computer that somebody no longer supports because you're several generations past, it's considered obsolete. And so we've got some of those situations. They still do their function. We just want to make sure that as we improve the system, we remove those obsolete controllers. So,
Councilor Erickson. Did you have
Two, and that was one.
one?
But I'll
You
wait.
had one
I'll
before.
wait.
Yeah.
I can
Wait. Councilor, are you? Go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, quick question about landfill. Two small questions. At one point, we were talking quite a bit about the new construction recycling-ish stuff. I don't know the correct terminology. Can you just give a brief update on where that is?
we can. So the question is, where's the MRF, as we call it, this material recovery system, where we would take the construction demolition debris dumpsters, dump them, sort them, and then sell those commodities.
Right.
There's a lot changing in that industry right now, and so we're concerned, probably cautiously concerned, about making that level of an investment. We also spent about a year and a half talking with some local contractors in that and saying, if we essentially just built the shell, could we do an RFP to allow a private individual to go in, put the equipment in, they bear the risk, they staff it, and then they have to sell the commodities, whether it's wood, metals, shingles. We've just, there's a lot changing in the recycle markets right now. China's not buying many recyclables right now, which is affecting more our normal household recycled products. But I'll just tell you, it's made us cautious about it. And so what we said is, let's take a step back. Let's make sure that we've got a good financial pro forma that we can rely on, and then let's go out to some successful ones. And so we did push it out in the plan, I think maybe to 2017. 2017, and so it's in the 5-year capital plan. We do, fundamentally think it's probably low-hanging fruit because in a construction dumpster, it's widely known about 70% of that's recoverable and recyclable. We just don't want to. We want to make sure that the numbers we provide you, and we go into those $5, $7, $8 million investment, whatever that financial performance says, that it's something that we can trust in, and we don't have that level of trust yet.
Great. Thank you for clarifying. And
Yeah.
one other question.
One more, yes.
In regards to the landfill as well, a while back, we heard of issues with the collection of fees for garbage haulers. I'm curious, as far as any outstanding accounts, where are we kind of at a high level with that as well?
I'd say we're in very good position, and then we have a team that manages now collections across Public Works with all with the active subdivisions, with the 52,000 water and wastewater customers. Dean and Diane actually dedicate time every week to collections, even if it's a small amount of time, just to make sure we stay ahead of it. And then our finance team is close, but I would say that we've significantly reduced the risk. And the one hauler that we did have to take action on, we did. And ultimately, but I would say the picture looks very good.
It's clean up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilor Urbanbach.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark. Question, talk about Foundation Park a little bit. I'm trying to cross-reference what's going to happen later tonight with what I'm seeing in the book. And you talked about it a little bit in your presentation, but I'm looking for, I realized our budget books are pretty high level. They aren't really very detailed. So can you talk about specific numbers in terms of what's going to happen in Foundation Park based on the city's share of that project in 16 and 17?
It may help if you can just bear with me to go back. Okay. Okay, so is there a pointer on this?
Right, so we're going to grade and gravel, right, Marion Road.
Right. Marion Road right now is gravel roads from the interchange at Marion Road. And then right now there is, and you can see McCrossen's Boys Ranch is essentially right up against I-90. And we have when the interchange was done, 16-inch water main was extended north of the interstate, which is a huge win for us with them going here. And also we've extended water over to McCrossen's Boys Ranch. So about where their entrance is into McCrossen's, a little bit farther north, that's where our water stops. So we're going to extend a 16-inch water main just north of that second entrance into Foundation Park. So a little bit farther north, right to about there, okay? So that's our investment from a water standpoint. I'll just give you rough numbers. I can add them up later. I think our investment in water for a 16-inch water main will be about $500,000, of which they have to pay a platting fee as they plat land out there of just about $1,650 per acre to start paying us back for that water. That's how we extend water mains. What Chad and I are working through is how far do we grade Marion Road? Do we stop at that second entrance, or maybe do we go up to about 259th Street when we're talking about just shaping the ditches and grading the road and kind of reestablishing the profile? We're not talking about much more investment. So we're going to see what it actually, we're going to design it up to that 259th Street. And if financials are looking good, we'll grade that as well. So now we've got a nice platform, water mains extended. The way we have it in our capital plan right now is to then surface it in 17. We may, I know that they're having great luck, and so what we'll do is we'll for sure and we'd like to actually start the design this fall. And so what we may do is grade all that in 16, and if financials come in good on our other flagship projects like 12th Street, Maple Street, 57th Street, 69th Street, we'll probably be in a position, if financials come in good, to just do the surfacing in 16. One of the things that Mike Cooper said is, we have to have hard surfacing for occupancy. And since they've essentially signed their first deal, we don't want to be any holdup to that. The road investment, we think, is about $1 million. So with the water and the road, that's about $1.5 million. Then in the lower near the interstate of I-90 and 29, right about there, is where a pump station will go in. And all that wastewater essentially will follow to that lift station. And then there'll be a force main that goes directly east over to the railroad tracks, a little bit farther east, stop, and then it'll dump into a gravity sewer that we'll extend up essentially from Sanford Sports Complex. We've got we've got a gravity sewer that's just to 60th Street North, and a part of that project would be to extend a gravity sewer up to that intersection point we just talked about. That essentially allows us to open up the park. The sewer investment, design, and construction is estimated at about $7.7 million. We've asked for the full authority of that in 2016 through the capital plan. That'll allow us to start design right away in 16, start the environmental documents, go through the state to get a low interest loan, and then potentially, if the design's ready, we would bid it in the fall of 16, so then a contractor could get essentially started right away in 17. So that's our overall, with that being 7.7 and $1.5 million for the road. That's our initial investment.
Mr. Chair, if I might, could we see that as, kind of a mini version of the budget? Can we do a pullout of that part of the budget so that we can understand Foundation Park just a little more clearly?
Sure.
So we're looking at lots of numbers, but now we've got these that are floating out in space that it would be nice to have on paper, if that would be okay with you.
Certainly.
Do
you need that for tonight?
Well, this is a pre-annexation agreement tonight, I guess. It would be wonderful if we could have it for tonight, but I realize this is incredibly short notice.
I'm sure Chad is turning red right now, so.
Sorry, you don't have to. I'm not saying that you have to do that. I just would really like to see that, especially just given the magnitude of this project. And then if I might, just a kind of out there question. I didn't prepare you for this, and I apologize. But can you talk about what are do you feel like we're making sacrifices for this, or what are the trade-outs that you've made in order to make this happen in such a short time period? This isn't something that, it's not even appearing really, it's not outlined in our CIP right now, and it hasn't been previously. Some of us have been on the council for a while. We've never seen this in the CIP. So what sorts of things had to wiggle in order for you to be able to say what you just said to me about this $8.5 million?
Well, probably the first time that I would recommend doing and Tracy Turback and I have talked about this. First of all, you've got a really sound wastewater fund, and you're pushing a lot of projects through it. I mean, we've talked a lot about the outfall, which is now $23 million, and the force main, that's $12 million, and just having those projects in the plan alone, I think it's a huge win for a city to look at the look forward, and we're still in that 4 to 6% rate increases going forward. So that's, I think that's a true win. And so what we did here is we said, all right, this is for industry, this is for jobs. How could we fit this in essentially into, let's understand when the cash flow is going out. So the main cash is going to go out of the fund in 17. The other thing to really remember is that this will be a loan, and so we're not taking $7.7 million out of the water rec fund to fund this. This is the one that I believe we said this is the industrial parks routinely develop slow. This one may surprise us, but with Tracy Turback and Dean Borkart, we looked at this and said, how could we have minimal effect on the fund and get this done? And so we're looking at a 20-year term. And so then you start to look at nearly interest-free dollars that come from the state. It'll be 2.25%, something like that. And then what the expected payment is over a 20-year period, it's fairly minimal. And so it didn't affect the fund negatively, and that's why the water team actually said instead of 17, let's put the full authority in 16. So if there's a chance we get all the design and the easements in, let's go to the market with this project in the third quarter, fourth quarter of 16, or at least be ready to go there. We're extremely happy that they've got a building that first owner that already wants to start doing soil borings. I mean, to me, that's a home run. In a normal situation, we probably would have done all the design and just waited for them to ink the first deal. Now it appears that they've inked the first deal, or very close, and so we don't want to hold anything up. And so really, it's the term that's allowed us to fit this in. certainly with the road, we've had to fit that $1 million into the arterial street fund, and that just becomes a priority. So that's probably more of a discussion on a portion of Madison Street that gets maybe pushed back a year. Another type of street that gets pushed back a year, but it has a fairly low impact to open up a significant job center, and those are the things that we think about.
Good, thank you. Mr. Chair, if I might ask leadership, is this a project that, and maybe we've already talked about this, that we could get updates on, regular updates? If once in a while, if we could just hear, we've started graveling, or we're this, or, it would just be helpful. I mean, this is really exciting, and we've all been involved with that announcement, but can we follow it now from our standpoint as council members? Yes. I would appreciate that. Thank you.
That's good.
Councilor Jameson, you had another question. I can read. Oh, no, now it's your turn again.
Mark, could you go back to that truck that you're going to implement with the monitoring the pavement?
Sure.
So this question's a little loaded. Of all the departments and directors I work with, I get great service from Galen when I call, Chad when I call, Mark, you when I call. But the citizen survey that is out there really tells us that 37% of the public think that the street repair is in good or excellent shape. It's the lowest of all of the questions and all of the things that we provide to citizens. When asked where we should spend all of our money, 98% said it should be on streets. Next is traffic flow. We'll have a discussion later with Heath about traffic flow, my priorities. We haven't talked anything about techcrete, my favorite word. But Mark, in your budget, and I've asked this of others, what have you done and what do you think you're doing that is going to raise that number from 37%? Do you have anything that you could maybe just share with us that's going to help us?
Right. I mean, I don't think that there's not a single bullet that I would share. Clearly, we'd like to see those numbers higher too, and sometimes the timing of a survey isn't reflective of good for public works, right? Every year, cities across the Midwest, if they take the survey between February and April, that's our tough time, because every pothole that we filled in the previous 8 months is either coming out or thinking about coming out. And so we've had timing of some surveys that have come out that I think are probably not reflective of the condition of the streets. But clearly we're trying to, you'll see in the capital plan that there's an increase in public works budget each year, and we start to significantly increase in the out years. We're also trying to utilize some new technologies like mastic and techcrete, and probably one we haven't talked about is warm mix asphalt, to essentially get more life out of the products that we put down. Microsurfacing has been, I think, a huge win for this area. We're only 6 years into it, so not a lot of neighborhoods have seen it yet, but it's really armoring our roads. And now just this last year, Brandon, Hartford, T, and Lennox added on to that same contract, so they could essentially do the same thing with their roads. I think at the end of the day, we're going to get a great baseline with this new technology. It's going to be accurate not only on the condition of the roads, but on rideability. Some of our roads that someone may drive, for example, on Kiwanis Avenue from 12th to 33rd. I personally drive it a lot. I love the street. There's not much congestion, but it rides rough. And so you're going to get, and what that is, it's faulting of panels. And so the panels are good, but you'll have a little bit of a fault or a little offset in the height of the concrete panels, and you'll get a fairly decent tire slap or jarring as you drive it. Some of those things, just as we're managing the whole pavement system, maybe there's some strategies that we can employ that, whether it's mastic, techcrete, maybe it's grinding, that once we get not only the condition but the ride and a new baseline, we'll just have, it's kind of, it's in some cases from us kind of like going from DOS to Windows. We're looking for better data so we can really target where we put those dollars. And hopefully, our team does a lot with our current pavement management system, but this is going to, I think, really allow them to take it to the next level, which then hopefully raises those numbers.
Councilor Karski.
Thank you. Mark, Maple Street, we're paving it from Career to west of Marion. Are we taking it all the way to the school?
I'll get to that, Counselor. We're not taking it quite to the school. One of the things that it's already a fairly sizable project, and so what we'll do is we'll go this far. One of the things that Chad and I talked about recently is we want to get some life out of what we did to lower that hill and widen those lanes out there, because really that's key. The new road will have sidewalk facilities on both sides, but then we'll actually drop down and we'll have separated pedestrian. What's key, I think, on this one is we don't need a 4-lane urban road out to the school because the only thing out there is the school. And it's only going to be the school for some time. We do have good back access because they county did pave La Mesa, but what we'll do is we'll build an urban road through what you see, and then we'll build good pedestrian facilities from here to the school.
And I think you answered the rest of my question. You said?
Yes, sidewalks, and then I believe in the sort of near the property line will be like a concrete pavement, but it'll be down away from the road. So we can follow up with more information once we get a preliminary design set.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
One more.
Yep. Going back to your storm drainage operation budget major changes, you talked about storm drainage and 3 additional hires to do storm drainage. The way I understood what you were saying, these aren't people that'll be putting shovels in grounds or fixing stuff. They're going to be basically managing the system, or to speak to that a little bit more. Help me understand that.
There'll be a crew. So they'll have there's a lead technician that'll essentially lead the crew. There'll be 2 technicians that one will probably run an excavator. One will probably be on a shovel, or one will be on a compactor. Because what you'll see is you'll go out there and you'll see a lid that's caved in. They'll pick that lid off. They'll probably pre-pour some lids in the off season. That's what Galen's team does today, but this crew could now do that, and they'll just be able to address that. This is a crew. This is boots on the ground. It's not management. It's we feel like we've got the management piece in there in the work order system. We need more boots on the ground to address these issues.
Thank you for that. And can they do that type of work year-round? Would that be better subcontracted over the months that it's done if they can't do that work year-round?
You can pretty much do that work year-round, certain elements of it, and then there's emergencies that have to be addressed. But the other thing that crew can then do is, because not just is the pipes and the structures, that there's 185 properties, and I think it was like over 1,000 acres. There's silt to be removed out of those ponds and channels, and this crew will also assist with that. So every year we'll take thousands of tons out of the river system, out of all the silt that washes in from the rural areas. But just like all the salt and chemicals that we put on the roads in the wintertime, all that ultimately, what we don't get collected in the street sweepers goes down the pipes and goes into those detention ponds. Those detention ponds need to be on a proactive basis of getting cleaned. So this crew will do that as well. That's the best time to do it, is in the wintertime, so you don't mar up all the adjacent lawns.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions if nobody else does.
Okay.
First one is, I'm really looking forward to the automated data collection system. I think that's going to be really cool.
Yeah.
As you and I talked, I was going to try and do it, or thought about it, but this is going to be really a good deal for the city, and because, streets are important, very, very important, and we need not only to keep them well repaired, but put in new ones and do it correctly when we do it. Then, can you tell me how much it costs extra to use snow gates over not using snow gates? Have we ever really figured that out, like I've asked at one time or another?
I think we certainly could break down what the, we could certainly break down what the equipment costs are and what the additional cost is to, and we expect that they'll last probably 5 years, so we got to get them on a 5-year replacement. There's installation and removal costs. We could certainly develop that, but we're using them system-wide. I thought we had, the teams did really good and the private contractors did really good. We didn't see much in the way of loss of productivity, but we could give you at least some of those hard inputs of what all the devices cost, what these private contractors charged us to install and remove, some of those, if that would help.
Sure.
Okay, we'll pull that together.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And you didn't even give us a graph or something that drove us wild.
That's right, thank you.
Yeah. Next, we've got community development.
Good afternoon, Darren Smith, Director of Community Development. Maybe we'll pause a moment and let Mark Cotter and his entourage exit here. Our group's a little smaller. Well, what you'll see with our presentation, just as a reminder, the Community Development Department is comprised of 3 divisions: Affordable Housing Division, the Economic Development Division, and the Public Parking System. And so you'll see that reflected in 3 separate or independent presentations. And as has been our practice in recent years, each of the managers in those division areas will present their own budget. So you'll hear from Les Kinstead in Affordable Housing, Brent O'Neill in Economic Development, and Matt Nelson in Public Parking. These guys know their budgets inside and out. It's a lot of fun working with them to build the budget as we look forward to the coming year and do that each and every year. But they also do a really good job of managing their budget throughout the year. So again, they know their budgets very well, and it's a nice opportunity for them to be able to present, talk about what we do in each of those areas, educate, and probably brag a little bit. So we'll jump right in and do that, and we'll start with Les Kinstead in the Affordable Housing Division.
Does that mean you're not coming back?
Only for questions, so
yeah,
you get a break
right.
today.
I'll believe that when I see it.
Hello. Well, as has been said about 3 times before I came up here, my name is Les Kinstead. I'm the Affordable Housing Manager. I'm glad to be here, see all of you again. Appreciate your service to the community.
Now you did it.
Yep, now I did it. Matt, which of these? This one? Okay, very good. We found the right button. Okay, affordable housing. Each of the slides that I have here today will go into some detail, not hopefully too much detail on any one of these programs, but when you take a look at the Affordable Housing Division, we have a number of different programs that we go through, and I'll try to give you a high-level view of what those particular programs are, and then we can move on to the other slides. Neighborhood Revitalization is a program whereby we, working in partnership with our long-term partner, Affordable Housing Solutions, a nonprofit that's an offshoot of the Housing Commission. We work with them in the acquiring of lots and blighted properties throughout the community. And we take those lots, we go and we will be building single-family homes. We will build multifamily properties there. And as we go into this a little further, you'll see some of the specific examples of what we do in that area. Our Major Projects Loan Fund, if you'll remember correctly, last year you appropriated $1 million for that fund. It's a loan fund. We use that to help build affordable housing in the community. So we'll have a little bit more about that in a few minutes as well. Rehabilitation. We do rehab in basically 2 areas. One is single-family rehab for people that are residents in the core of the city. If you take a look at a lot of the folks that we deal with, and I neglected to mention this at the outset, all of the folks who we have that we deal with have to be at 80% or lower of area median income. So you really are talking about some folks that really don't have the wherewithal that some of us are fortunate enough to have. We also see people that are well below that. I've looked at applications for assistance with people living on Social Security alone at $800 a month. When you've got that kind of a budget, it's pretty tough to stay ahead of the shingles, all those things. So we do that with single-family homes, major part of our program. We also do it with rental property, and so we have a program where we can assist rental property owners in keeping their properties up. Homebuyer assistance, we provide up to $5,000 per first-time home buyer so that you can help some people get over that initial hurdle for becoming homeowners and acquiring the largest asset that most of us will ever own. Rental assistance and case management, they kind of go hand in hand. It's called the Bright Futures Program. We work with our partner, Interlakes Community Action Program, to work with families that are homeless or near homeless to kind of turn their lives around. And again, we'll be more on that later. Community outreach, a number of different programs that reach out into the community themselves. One example is the Habitat for Humanity. We work with them in buying lots for their stock of lots so that they can build homes. We also work with the Bishop Dudley Hospitality House and the Homeless Advisory Board. We recently just moved some money into our budget from the economic development budget, so we'll be handling that. Probably everybody felt a more logical fit. The Repair Affair with the Home Builders Association, various programs of this nature. So those are kind of an overview, and our investment is $4.3 million is what we're asking of the council in 2016. The Affordable Housing Major Projects Loan Fund, again, there's a continued high demand for affordable housing in the community. We are starting to make a small dent in it, but it takes a lot of dollars to address that kind of an issue, and so we continue to see that high demand. We have a competitive process whereby developers in the community will come in and apply for those dollars and those funds. In 2014, the first year that we had this program, we completed or funded, helped to fund 56 units out on the T. Ellis Road on the west side, Westwood Apartments. That project is now nearing completion. The buildings are renting as fast as they can be built and leased, so that project is going very well. 2015, this year, current year, we have earmarked funds for 3 projects that will include 108 units of affordable housing. And again, as I mentioned before, these are all long-term loans that are repaid to the city. We'll cover some of that a little bit more in a later slide. So our efforts were to increase the supply of affordable housing. In 2014, we had 56 units out on the west side of town and 13 units that we built here in town on the Neighborhood Revitalization Program. Those 13 units were both single-family and multifamily. There happens to be a picture of one of the single-family homes that we do. In addition, in 2014, we assisted 14 first-time home buyers, a little bit less than we did the previous year. You'll see those numbers ebb and flow as the years come and go. Stabilizing the supply of quality affordable housing. Basically what we're talking about here is the program I just talked about. Single-family owner-occupied homes rehabilitated, 47 of them, 53 in 2014, 47 the year before. This program has been around for years. If you look around the community, there are in excess of 1,000 homes that have been rehabilitated in the core of the city with this particular program. So the neighborhoods are going to look a lot better than if this program had not existed. But also mentioned the rental housing units. We received a loan from the South Dakota Housing Development Authority, $500,000 no interest loan to be used as a revolving fund for the rental properties. We have all that money placed. We have it at 0% interest. We charge 3% to the rental property owners, and we put it out in amounts of $25,000 or less. All those dollars are out. It's a 5-year amortization, so those dollars are starting to come back in again. We have more dollars in that revolving fund now to place back out again, work with the rental property. Here is an example of, if you ever drive by the corner of 11th and Spring, the before picture, that was probably one of the roughest rental properties I've ever seen in Sioux Falls. I've lived here a long time, and it was a really tough one. A fellow bought that, came in, received a loan, and you see the property now. I would urge you next time you go by there to take a look. it's quite an improvement. I mentioned earlier our Bright Futures program. We work in conjunction with Interlakes Community Action Program. This is a program for families, so it only deals with families, and it deals with homeless and near homeless families that are referred from other social service agencies throughout the community. The hallmark of this program is not just doling out dollars or assistance to someone. The hallmark of the program is that they do receive what's called intense case management. There are 1.5 caseworkers that work this. They take, full-time caseworker takes 24 clients at any one given time, and they work with them and trying to help them to learn how to manage their lives. Part of the process that we're going through is mandatory courses that they take, teaching them the essentials of parenting, budgeting, applying for jobs, securing employment, retaining that employment. We're happy to say that in 2014 we had a graduation rate of people that are successful and keep on doing those good things in the community of about 50%. We also have the ability to provide, some of the people that are homeless, there literally are no dollars for them to secure housing. So we have, for the security deposit on an apartment, that's usually an important part of getting housing, and the first month or two of housing until they get started, get into their job and start earning a living, we will help them with the rent. But the objective is that they pay that for themselves and work into non-homelessness in a stable situation. I mentioned earlier the elimination of blighted property. This was one house on Blauvelt Avenue up on North Blauvelt. The picture is not quite large enough. Maybe it's a little bit better on your screen, but this too is a pretty rough property. And we did 4 properties this year, 5 in 2013, and that adds to that stock of lots that can be available for rebuilding housing. You'll notice the lovely kitchen to the right. It literally was that way when we went in. That house has since been scraped and moved on, and it's in a position now of being used for clean, safe, sanitary, suitable housing for people. The uses of funds, when you take a look at all of those different programs that we have, you can read for yourself. I don't need to go through those numbers. There's the $4.3 million that we're spending within our program. The sources of funds are basically 3 main sources. Federal funds comprising $1.1 million of our budget. Program income revolving funds, I mentioned that when we reinvest money, we have homes that are sold. The money all goes into a revolving fund that allows us to continue building those properties. And then you as a council and the City of Sioux Falls has a lot to be proud. 43% of our budget is general funds. So it's not an insignificant amount, especially in a time when federal funds are waning. So thank you. This takes a good look at the changes between last year and this year. You can see we were at $3.9 million. We're now at 4.3. The numbers in the column indicate the plus or negative change and swing in those numbers. Wages and benefits, we have the same number of FTEs in the coming year that we have this year, no increase in personnel. The $28K that you see is just for COLA, cost of living, benefits, things of that nature, so it's a small amount of money. Professional services and neighborhood revitalization, multifamily. There are years when we'll do more multifamily. There are years when we'll do more single family. This happens to be that we're doing 2 more single family houses this year than last, and so the numbers swing a little bit. That 389 comes back into the fund once the house is sold. Habitat for Humanity, we replenish and help them replenish their inventory of lots that they use for their program. We didn't do that last year or the year before, so now we're coming in with about 78 grand there to help them acquire some additional lots. I mentioned the reassignment of money from economic development, both the Homeless Advisory Board and the Homeless Warming Site. There's $68,000 of swing up, but it's just moving it from another category, economic development. And then other various small increases total up to about $43,000, laying out for you what the difference is between this year and last year. So that is my spiel, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have, or if not, we can.
Should we take Les right now rather than bring him back up, or would you rather go through? Ask him? Okay, questions? Go ahead, Counselor.
Yeah, could you describe the warming shelter?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was trying to tell where we were coming from. Describe the warming shelter? Yeah, the warming shelter, that's another word for the Bishop Dudley Hospitality House. That name is stuck prior to the time that Bishop Dudley was in existence. It was the warming house, the Salvation Army warming house. And since Bishop Dudley's been built and come into existence, that's what it is, Councilor Jameson. So,
thank you. Yep. Seeing no others, I do have one less, and that is with all the projection from the healthcare systems of that they purchase property and homes and things like that, are we looking at taking some of those homes, purchasing them for them or asking them for them, and then moving them to a site that Habitat or whatever can? I was visiting with a contract the other day, and he said, I'll not quote him, but he said that we could probably move houses that, if they were given to us, and get it all set up, ready to go for $65,000 to $80,000.
okay. That's in response to your question. Yes, we are considering that. That's a process that is currently underway. Darren has taken the initiative and will be pulling together representatives of the council and various contractors, various interested parties that have done this before and can contribute to the dialogue. And so, yes, we are actively taking steps to do that and to address it. I think it would be premature for me to offer anything until we get some of those folks together, but we're taking a good look at it. So,
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Les.
Okay, thank you.
Public Park and Matt.
That's just the right one.
Yeah, it's the right one.
Okay, thank you. Matt Nelson, Public Parking Facility Manager. And as you know, I'm the manager of public parking, and just to run through some brief numbers here, we have about 2,500 off-street parking spaces currently. That makes up about a quarter of all the parking downtown that's off-street. So it's a good mix of public and private in our downtown market. You'll see the numbers for our parking ramps and lots. Those don't include, obviously, the new ramp that we are planning, so that'll be a fifth ramp, and it doesn't include the management of the City Hall ramp. That's something we've picked up in the last year and a half, where we actually manage that facility in conjunction with facilities management to save cost and be more efficient with that. And then we've actually added a little over I believe it's about 100 spots downtown with on-street parking with the Main Avenue Diet. So the addition of diagonal parking has increased that number from previous years. And our total budget investment for next year is $14.4 million. Our actual operating budget is only increasing about 2.3%, and the big jump that you'll see is in our capital projects that we're planning for next year. This slide we typically show every year, and what you'll see is our occupancy rates from the past and our target, which is kind of a mix of where we feel we should be and where we want to be. So this year we plan to be around 88% by the end of the year. We're currently exceeding that at 89%. So our growth is a little faster than what we anticipated. And next year we plan, or we would like to see 96% occupancy. We believe we're also going to be a little higher than that. There's a good possibility we'll be very close to 98, 99% full. We've been there in the past, and it was about 10 years ago. It will make things a little tight, but we are in a good situation where we're planning for the future, and that's something we didn't have planned 10 years ago, a good plan in place to build a new ramp. So I feel like we're in a very good place. By industry standards, typically you will start talking about a new ramp when you're in that 70% occupancy range, which we did in late 2013, 2014. You'll start planning for a new ramp in the 80% occupancy rate. That's where we are now. And you'll build when you're in the 90% occupancy rate. And that's where we plan to be next year. So as far as the numbers go, it doesn't line up much better than where we are, barring a large tenant coming downtown. But right now it looks really, really good from a financial perspective for our department. Our budget will actually increase slightly on the personnel side, and that's from pension and COLA contributions. Our operating expenses are being reduced by about 3.5%, and those reductions are no cuts in services or programs. Everything will remain as it is. We've created some efficiencies in our department that we've done almost every year, and we've also been able to budget a little better with our new Munis financial software. We're able to look at our budget and find things that may have been double budgeted. Maybe they were budgeted in one place and paid out of another department line. We're now finding those and we're cleaning it up, and it allows for us to create a much more efficient budget. The big expense, which we'll talk about, is our capital expense, and we'll hit those in the next slides. and then you'll see the debt line. That debt line is for an interest-only financing payment on a new facility, and that is budgeted for 2016. We don't intend to spend all of that money, likely for 2016, but we wanted to budget it as conservatively as possible. That is a 5% interest rate, and it would be over 20 to 30 years. So we know we can cover it, but for a full year of payments, we don't anticipate financing that until later in the year. Our plan would be to pay for everything with user fees up front and finance at the latest possible point just to avoid interest fees. Touch on some of the other capital projects in there quick. We will be buying a new T3 is the brand. It's the Segway that you'll see downtown. Just want to touch on that because that is a huge win for us. We're going to be adding 2 of those. And what a lot of people don't realize when they see that, that is a cost-saving initiative for us. Gets our employees off of their feet, reduces worker compensation claims, and we've gone over the years from workers' compensation on an annual basis of nearly $20,000 down to around $5,000. So it's been a huge win for us. It's a very low cost to operate piece of equipment and very little maintenance on it. So that's been a huge win. The other thing that we are looking at purchasing is a sweeper, and we are planning to collaborate with downtown Sioux Falls on that. So we're going to share some costs. We've got money budgeted to purchase the whole sweeper, but we will share that because we won't use it probably as much as we should, but just by buying it ourselves, we'll be able to save costs on it. But if we can save it, we'll be able to save more money for ourselves and more money for downtown Sioux Falls. So that's another collaboration that we're working on for next year. Just briefly want to talk about some of the initiatives that we have coming up. One is going to be our rate adjustment. Run through our rate adjustments here, and some of them were over 10 years ago. Our last parking overtime citation increase was $3 to $5 in 2004. The parking meters went from 40 cents to 60 cents in 2008, but those were only the meters off of Phillips Avenue. There were some of the meters that aren't very busy or highly utilized. Just want to touch on that we are trying to do more with less. We've initiated a lot of new initiatives over the past few years. We've implemented online payments, credit card payments, smart parking meters. We've automated our ramps. We've signed all of our locations and our ramps with the same sign so the public comes down and can use those ramps for free. And all of this costs money. We've implemented new software to make us more efficient. But our fees have not increased, most of them for at least 7 years. So how did we do that? We've been fighting inflation year after year and some of the increased costs, and part of that is we've reduced staffing in our department. So we're probably one of the few departments you will ever see reduced staffing. We've implemented energy efficiency strategies. We've put LED and lights in our ramps that have saved us energy costs on an annual basis. We've outsourced a lot of our services that were low-level tasks, and we can do them cheaper when we send them out, and that would be like payment processing and some of the collection processes that are automated better by outside companies. And we've reviewed all of our contracts. So we've gone through almost every one of them and said, can we do this better? Can we find a better price? And like our collections contract, now we are working with a company that does just parking tickets. And we've reduced our fees from 33% to nearly 20%, which is a huge savings on an annual basis every year. We even received a check from back taxes from the state of South Dakota last year. So we went through a lot of what we were paying for taxes and policies at the state level. And we were able to find an error that was made, and we received a back payment check, and we're also saving $15,000 on an annual basis. So I just want to make sure you do know that before we do any adjustments, we have gone through almost everything we could to make sure that we're doing it correctly and saving as much money as possible. One of the other initiatives that you'll see for next year is the Carnegie parking lot. So just let me warn you ahead of time that that parking lot will likely be closed for a week, so which is a little sensitive at times, but we are investing in our lots now. We've gone through and created a program where we were investing in making improvements in all of our ramps on an annual basis. Now we feel like they're in a very good place, and now we're investing in our lots. So this is an initial rendering of what the Carnegie parking lot will look like. A huge improvement. We'll be removing the flower beds filled with asphalt, and we'll be putting in actual flowers and shrubs. So we're excited about that. And then as part of that, we are collaborating with Public Works. So when they do the Main Avenue Diet improvements on 200 South Main, that's when this parking lot will be done. So it allows both of us to save money and some of the mobilization costs that come up. We're also going to initiate pay by license plate at that point. That's a multi-space parking meter that you see pictured there, and the pay by license plate is the system that we would like to use at this point and feel it provides the best customer service, and it's the most efficient system for us and the citizens to use. And here's our big project. It's a new parking facility, and as you've seen our rates, we're filling up. We plan to be near 100% occupancy next year. We know that we need to build a new parking facility, which will take approximately a year to build, and that will span from 2016 to 2017. It will add approximately 500 to 600 public parking spaces in the downtown area, and we're putting that in based on the growth and demand that we're seeing from the private sector. This will be a true public-private partnership, which is commonly referred to as a P3 development. And just want to make sure that it's very clear that the public parking department will pay for the parking and the private parties will pay for the private developments on it. So they will pay for the hotel and they will pay for the residential that's incorporated along with the retail. So it really is a partnership, and why we do this is to hopefully we want to share costs on elevators and footings and development. So it truly, everyone benefits in this relationship. And you'll notice that the footprint has changed slightly from our initial concept, which is actually from a public parking perspective a huge win. When we extended this footprint to Phillips, there was more underground parking, which is very expensive to build, and there was also a sewer line that we would have had to relocate along Wall Avenue. The cost for that would have been anywhere from $1 to $2 million, so that's money that we can save now on the public parking side. So if there's any questions, I think this is my final slide. For this project, we're looking at approximately $12 million at this point budgeted. That would be $3 million in user fees and approximately $9 million that would be financed.
Questions? Councilor Karski.
Matt, the old, I guess our Sushi Masa restaurant we have a parking ramp there, and at one time that was slated for development, condo type unit. Any plans for that, or is that just kind of fallen to the wayside?
This time it's fallen to the wayside. So that was a development we're working on, and another public-private partnership that didn't work on the private side. We were already on the public side. Now we've gone on to add parking elsewhere. I can tell you we would not do anything there until this new ramp was completed, just because of space needs and demands for parking. But at some point, who knows, we may come back and revisit that. That development is not going in, but there's one that's likely to go in right across the street from the Washington Pavilion that's going to be very comparable, and it's done on the private side also. So I think that's definitely a win.
Thank you.
Councilor Erickson.
Thank you. Thanks, Matt. You're speaking my language. I appreciate you highlighting the areas where you're finding areas to save money and making it more efficient. I think it's huge, and it makes it easier for operating the parking area as well. My question is in regards to the Washington Square, I think is what it's called. How many parking spaces will be added to that will be available to the public system?
And I'll default to Brent because he's been working a little more closely with them. I know about the project. I believe it's a couple hundred, but I'm not involved in those negotiations.
Okay, so. I just was curious how that will impact your parking.
That's something that was an issue that we've looked at. There were some concerns with that project, and our parking next door. The first thing we did is we looked at the Washington Pavilion, the amount of parking available around the Washington Pavilion, and we did an initial analysis. And there is plenty of parking around the Washington Pavilion. So there is what we would consider A-level parking in the industry, which is within a block. There was enough parking within a block of the pavilion to accommodate a sold-out event, which would include the Belbus Theater, the Great Hall, and some other smaller events and some outside rooms. So there is plenty of parking there. The concern was building and selling parking in a facility that the city was funding. We just wanted to make sure that it was a collaboration between the two. Right now, it is going to be a win for us because we're working with them to meet parking needs of their building with our facility, which is the pavilion ramp. So they'll use part of our ramp and they'll use their own parking currently.
Thank you.
I have Councilor Jameson.
Thank you, Matt. The road diet, when are we adding those new meters on those new spots?
It's looking like early 2016, and it will start on the block of 200 South Phillips. So we'll do a block at a time. We'll call it a trial at this point. So we'll initiate it with the pay stations. We want to make sure the pay-by-plate system works well. We know it works well because in other areas, we want to make sure it works well here. And we're trying to push it to the end of this year, but with the Main Avenue diet and funding for that, it's likely that the construction and the design won't be completed until next year, early next year.
How much revenue are you projecting that those new spots will generate? Do you have an idea?
It's tough to say. It's going to be, there's not a ton of extra spots there. It's probably going to be, I would say 10,000 or less. It's probably going to be 7,000-ish, just offhand, rough number. And that's another thing that when we're saying we're doing more with less, we did lose a lot of revenue when the Main Avenue diet was implemented. We lost all those meters. So we've absorbed that and some of our increased activity downtown between lease parking and meters. But it's going to be significant enough where we feel it is important to add those. And it's also important to note that there is no free parking. So even though I know now there are time zones there, it costs us time and resources to enforce that 2-hour parking to make sure there's turnover there. So although there's not meters, somebody else then is paying for someone to go and mark every one of those vehicles and write tickets and spend time going one by one and entering every license plate in. So that's more of why we do it. It's not a revenue generator. We'll look at it as a break even.
When you said more with less, I thought you were talking about less with more.
Well, less does more too. So
all right, I was just okay. And then on the bump outs for that Main Street diet, I had a question asked one time, intrigued me a little bit. Maybe you're not the right one, but you brought it up, I guess. That extra room that now these businesses have for doing business, do they have any responsibility or increased tax liabilities or anything? Do they participate in recovery or any of that?
I'd have to. I honestly, I don't know. So
maybe we save that for next time. Is that a segue into your presentation? Maybe.
If I had a segue, I'd.
On his feet.
Whoa.
Nice.
Well, and I was thinking of. Matt brought up the other segue just a little bit ago, and I was thinking how much faster it would be in the rain here to get here today. But so actually, on that, it would be like all other bump outs downtown. So we have a sidewalk use program, and people pay a permit every year, and that's really it remains the public's property. There's no taxes on it or anything, but there is a small fee.
Like $100 or what?
It's lower than that. It's $35.
And they pay it once a year.
Once a year, yeah.
But they clean it.
Generally, the maintenance for using it is on them, yes.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
And then if I may, while I'm up here, I don't want to leave Matt hanging on Councilor Erickson's question on the parking spaces. It's 125 spaces in that Washington Square facility that would be made available to the public, leasable during the day and free nights and weekends.
Matt, I have one question since I see no others, and that is our one request. I guess when you're planning that Carnegie Lot rehab, you might want to consider a month that has 5 Tuesdays in it and look at the week that has the 5th Tuesday, just because there would be no council meeting that week at all. And just an idea for you, if you could, that would probably help a lot of people.
And yeah, absolutely, that's what we're going to attempt to do. The tough part is with asphalt is we some are reliant on the millers and the asphalt layers, but we've already talked about that, so that will be our goal. And if we can't do that, can we do it on a Wednesday to Sunday type of basis? So we'll definitely try to do that.
Thank you. Okay, lastly, where am I?
Brent. Thank you. Brent O'Neill again from the Economic Development Division. I'm going to get started just by kind of giving you an overview of our vision and kind of the high-level things we do. I mean, really, in a nutshell, what we do comes down to facilitating a vibrant economy for Sioux Falls, looking at strong economic growth, building our tax base, and, of course, bringing great jobs to the community. Kind of 3 different buckets of things that we look at it doing. One is assisting businesses, developers, industries, and others through our local business and development process. That's what we really term our development concierge, our business concierge, and that is really, for those industries or businesses that need help or even acceleration through the approval process. We help them in that way. The second is to provide and administer programs. This is where tax increment financing comes into play, our sales tax rebate program, other things that we do, including helping partner with other agencies that can offer programs as well. The third, recently we were here selling some land in the uptown area for an office building, so even land development type projects. The parking ramp project that Matt referred to would also be another one that falls into that category. And then lastly, I'd like to point out that we do have a lot of partners. I'll mention them later in the presentation, but really maximizing our efforts by bringing our strengths to the table and partnering them with their strengths to really build the best economic development program we can for the community. Among our indicators, there's two that I'd like to highlight here. One is just a number of projects that we work with and help on an annual basis. 38 projects received our support, whether technical in nature or through an incentive basis or some other form of partnership in 2014. And then our department is also responsible for neighborhood organizations. That includes the various neighborhood associations you see, and then two organizations that are really not so geographically based, but they're still community oriented and community minded. So we have a full-time staff person devoted to supporting those organizations. Our budget, in a nutshell, is $8.8 million. We have $8.5 million in operating, and then $300,000 in the capital side. That's for our facade easement program. Looking at our expenditures this year really comes down to these 6 buckets. The two biggest ones, and I wanted to highlight them first, are really pass-through funds. Those are funds that are administered through the city and through our budget. So the CVB has the bid tax and I call it the BBB tax, but those generate about $3.5 million together. And then TIF, as we approved as a city, TIFs over the past years, there's an administration of those, and it takes several years to do that. So TIF at $2.8 million would be paid out. Both of those are non-general fund sources, so those are really revenues that come in and then revenues that go out. They equal each other. We do support some of our partners, the Sioux Falls Development Foundation, Forward Sioux Falls, and Downtown Sioux Falls, so the big three there. Our support there totals nearly $1 million. As you guys were well aware, last year was the first time we looked at workforce development funding from the city level. The council approved $500,000. We are going to be talking about that $500,000 again for 2016, and I do have a slide about workforce development in a minute. Our personnel piece, about $500,000, and then we have $200,000 in our other operating expenses. Wanted to show you the changes from 2015 to 2016 as we're proposing it. We start at $7.2 million baseline from last year, and we ultimately end up at that $8.5 million. So this slide here shows you some of those changes. We have that first group of expenses, wages and benefits and other, about $40,000 in those areas. Again, I wanted to highlight those pass-through funds, those revenues that we collect and then pass on to other organizations. The two big ones here, and this is the big driver for our budget increase this year, is those revenues that go to the CVB, as well as our administration of tax increment financing. Downtown Sioux Falls, the Business Improvement District, we anticipate a small increase there. And then we're actually doing some budget realigning to make sure that our revenues and our expenses are matching the actual. So we're actually proposing a small decrease in the lodging occupancy tax that ultimately supported some things with the Hilton Garden Inn. And this is, again, like I said, just kind of realigning to what the actual will be. It's not a decrease, so to speak. And then our last two are reassignment of programs. Les already mentioned two of his programs that had been previously in economic development that primarily worked with homeless services. Then the other big one is some things we're looking at for 2016, which is moving sanitation of downtown, the public trash cans, from the city to Downtown Sioux Falls, the organization. And as part of that, it'll be shifting that budget responsibility from our facilities team to community development, who can administer those with Downtown Sioux Falls. So that is really how we get from our 2015 baseline to 2016 proposal. I mentioned earlier that we have quite a few partners. I've listed them up there. This slide should look fairly familiar. Again, the Foundation, Downtown Sioux Falls, CCOG, the CVB, Forward Sioux Falls, the Governor's Office of Economic Development, and the Chamber of Commerce. A new one on the slide this year, and I know it's one that you've been familiar with and have had some conversations on, is the USD Discovery District. That's the research park out by University Center, where there's a lot of momentum and a lot of things happening out there to see that project go forward. So we're excited to work with them as well. Again, for 2016, and a lot of this is overlap from 2015, but now that the rail yard proposal is to the point where we can start working on the redevelopment piece of that. So we'll be ramping that up, even in 2015, 2016, and 17, and that's one we're very excited about. We want to continue to focus on the sports entertainment district, that area out around the event center and the Sanford complex and the airport. And then obviously it wasn't that long ago that we talked about Foundation Park, how important that was to the community to get that started. I know Public Works talked a lot about it this afternoon. The USD Research Park, again, would fit in that category, as would some of the other things we're working even with some private entities on making some industrial land available. We'll continue to focus on workforce development. We're really, right now in 2015, building more of an effort on business retention, recruitment and site visits there. And so that should be in full swing yet this year and be a major focus next year. Continue to look at the programs we offer the business community, continue to market our community and promote our community and promote the things we can do. And then again, kind of piggybacking on the project Matt talked about, the downtown parking project, the partnership with an economic development project will be a major focus and a major use of our time in the next 12 to 18 months. Again, just as a reminder, that $2.8 million that is administered through TIF is on those existing TIF districts, and that's just kind of a reminder for you. And now that we're nearing the end, I did want to pay a little special focus to the workforce development program. I know when it was implemented last year, one of the things we talked about was being engaged with the council in particular on this program and talking to you ahead of the 2016 budget on the funding level for 2016. So in a nutshell, just to kind of summarize where we're at, we did launch it in early 2015. 8 grants were awarded. And then one of those 8 grants was developing a long-term strategic plan for workforce development in the community that was championed by Forward Sioux Falls. So of those other programs, of the $500,000 total, the remainder of the programs applied for, and we've awarded about $440,000. So we've spent nearly all of that, or we've committed nearly all of that original appropriation. The first project started this summer. I think our first contracts actually came to the council in late May or early June, and we had a couple of tricklers after that. We anticipate those programs serving about 400 people. Thus far, we have 80 enrolled. We know there's another one at the end of this month that'll probably get another 40, and we really expect that to ramp up this fall. And even, just kind of on a positive note for only being really fully in effect and programs in place for about 2 months, already have 20 job placements associated with this program. So we'll feel very good about that. One thing I did want to just kind of mention to you, and something that I'd like to talk to you guys about, in the next couple weeks, including your staff, is the funding level of this program. We did spend $440 this year. With that the long-term plan accomplished, that's probably one that we don't see ourselves clearly refunding on an annual basis. And we're also not sure where the actual demand will be for the fund, which kind of segues into, I had to use that word, I'm sorry, segues into another thing we've talked about. We've had a late request from USD Research Park to help them with some of their operations. And I know as we've talked internally, even though it's a little bit late to the game, it's something that we really feel is important for 2016. They are looking at leveraging other resources, so there's really about a 3-to-1 return on any investment the city might make into that program. So they've asked the city for $150,000, and they could leverage $450,000 to get about $600,000 in startup funds to really do some big things with that park. And so, when I said I'd like to talk to you guys, it's kind of in this workforce development area that we're wondering if there's some opportunities here to do some tweaking and maybe support workforce development at a high level and support USD Research Park. kind of in closing, and before we open it up, I know there was a question, and David Bixler passed it on too, just a kind of a status update on where things are with SiouxFallsHasJobs.com. So again, I with Darren's help, put together a few bullet points, and I'll go through them really quickly. Again, that program launched in April, and we have some good metrics to report at this point. Since then, roughly a 4-month period, there's been 260,000 views of that site. That's an average of more than 2,100 views per day on average. It had 3,500 visitors over that 4-month period. 1/3 of the visitors on a daily basis are repeat visitors, and then 2/3 of those are unique first-time visitors. These are kind of some interesting stats. Of all the clicks and where we're able to trace them to, 42% of them are from Sioux Falls, which means about 60% of those are from people outside the community looking at job opportunities in Sioux Falls. A handful of those certainly are from other parts of South Dakota, but we've seen them in Minneapolis. Ironically, the top 5 include Chicago and New York City. Minneapolis is our top out-of-state entity, as well as like Rochester, Sioux City, and Omaha. Just on a kind of a fun note too, there are quite a few from outside the United States, including Europe and Africa. So that's kind of just fun to see. We've actually got a little map that shows where those hits are. We've done some upgrades to the site, so now we've got some links and some tie-ins with the Chamber's website, downtown Sioux Falls, our own city page, the Washington Pavilion, and the Denny Sanford Premier Center. We actually, kind of one of the hidden benefits, so to speak, is, how the internet financial model works. We actually are getting enough clicks to generate a small amount of income from the site as well. It's modest at $350 per month, but it is something that does help come back to the city. And we're continuing to work on enhancements that'll be developed soon. And then I wanted to point out too, we have $20,000 budgeted for 2016 to maintain the site, pay hosting fees, make some minor enhancements, continue to do some of the advertising we do, and so forth. So with that update, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Questions? Councilor Erickson.
I have a few questions, so I can ask a couple and then move on and come back in case somebody else asks them. You mentioned the Ford Sioux Falls plan in the workforce development. What's the completion date for that? What are we looking at?
They're really at the point of being at the finish line, and so there's going to be some announcements with that in the coming weeks or month or two for sure. Okay.
And you did answer my questions about the USD Discovery Research Park as far as having that on the list and what the intent of was that. That was my question as far as the intent on that. The other thing that I heard you mention, I think a handful of times, is focus on business retention and recruitment. What does that look like for your department?
I think at the beginning really starts with just making contact with our existing businesses and sitting down with them and talking about where things are at for their business. Do they have needs? Do they have plans? Do they, either of those needs or the plans really tie back to the city in any way? Do they have an infrastructure need for an expansion? Do they have a workforce development need, for example, with an expansion? Or do they have some sort of project shortfall that they want to do that they want to talk to us anyway? So it's really having those communications.
Is that only for the research park, or is that a focus for the community as a whole?
Community-wide, it'd be community-wide.
Okay. And then the last question, I'm sorry, I shouldn't, I was going through some stuff and I was like, oh, I've been meaning to ask about this. Is there anything or an update or about the mosaic wall? Anything, is that in the plan to do that, or are we waiting to see what the RFP for the triangle comes back with? I know that it's certainly been a hot topic at times, and I don't know if you or Darren are the ones to answer on that, and I kind of put you on the spot. I apologize.
No, that's okay.
But it just sparked my attention when I was going through some notes.
Yeah, if Darren does want to come up and has a better answer than I would, I'd be happy for that. I will start by saying that, that wall really is largely separate from that triangle piece that we're looking at. So as of right now, it wouldn't be fair to say that the triangle piece will really affect that, but certainly as we know more about what might happen there,
in
we'll
that
have to look
development.
at it again, yeah.
Yeah. I just was curious because I didn't
Sure.
see it added anywhere, and I know it's a fairly small amount, a small dollar amount to kind of shine it up, so to speak. So I was just curious on if there was anything with that.
We are, on that note, we've talked with other departments, so, as of right now, CD is not. I know there are a couple other departments at the city looking at that as well.
Thank you. I'll save a few because I'm sure other people have questions.
Any other questions? Yes, Councilor Jameson.
Brent, on the pass-through funds for the Convention and Visitors Bureau, lodging tax and occupational tax, could you explain that again, the pass-through amount? Is that changed? Is that a new, bigger number, or is that an increase of 544?
Yeah, the two combined, I'm going to find my slide here. So the slide where we talked about a $544,000 increase is what we're projecting 2015 over 2016 for both the hotel tax as well as the 1 cent tax.
And that's just based on the increase in activity. It's not a new, it's not a taking a part of what they collect in their $2 room tax, right?
Yeah, it's all driven by the users, so there's that many more hotel rooms being rented or occupied.
Okay. And on the workforce development, we talked about this before when maybe I was the stick in the mud about it, but here we are at that budget time trying to approve another 500. When the council started that, the idea was that we weren't going to have any results in when we needed to try to fund it again, and you mentioned one, I think, that has maybe 20 jobs that you can. Yeah. So on what grounds, other than just one, or maybe there's more, but on what grounds are you requesting another 500?
Sure. Well, I think it's really between roughly February and today when we first announced the program and started taking applications. We heard a lot of demand. We heard a lot of good ideas, and we knew that there were people in place to get some good things done. We know that workforce development, has been and continues to be a need. So that is part of the driver, knowing that we have to solve that problem. Kind of secondary to that, I think you make a good point. We're still a little bit early. I would just say that I think we anticipate very good results, but much like we did last year, we'd want to continue to work with the council on this. I know it's a large amount of money, and it's a bit of a delicate program, and certainly having Dave Bixler involved with us last year, I think helped a lot. And so, as we asked the council to look at it again this year, I think we'd make that same commitment again, that we definitely want to work with you. And at the same time, I'd also say that it's really not our intent to spend it if we didn't have a good reason to. So we'd also be, still holding the bar very high on the applicants. And if we found, let's just say, as it's budgeted now, $500,000 in good programs to put it towards, we'd want to do that. If we did not have that full amount of good programs to support, we would feel more comfortable spending what was appropriate and then leaving some of that unspent.
If I could, let's say you came up with several plans. I guess I'm just trying to get a couple things around my head. The last time the council was in charge of spending the money, you helped us through that. This time you're in charge of spending the money. You're proposing to be in charge of spending the money. Maybe the council would help you through that. Kind of a role reversal a little bit. But as well, I'm curious on money that, or ways that money could be spent other than those grant programs like you did last time.
Yeah.
For instance, could you use any of that money to promote SiouxFallsHasJobs.com?
Well, I think when you say could, is that money eligible? I don't think we've really viewed the SiouxFallsHasJobs.com as part of that bucket of funds.
Workforce development, wouldn't it be?
Yeah, yeah. So when you say could, I mean, we could spend it there. We, in 2015, intentionally spent it, out of some of the other areas where we could.
I think I got the answer. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Just one small follow-up. as we continue to talk about the research park and my time in Pierre, it was certainly something that we debated quite heavily, and the state gave $1 million of seed money, so to speak, to get the ball rolling. So my question is if that's something that you're here kind of pitching to us, that it would fall in the workforce development, is that something that the administration is in support of, giving that $150,000 of ongoing money to the research park?
Yeah.
And would you envision seeing it in the workforce development, or how, I guess just elaborate on that a little bit.
Sure. I think there's definitely a workforce development component there.
I'd agree.
By far, I just don't, as we looked at it, we didn't know if it was, in kind of the same vein as maybe some of the other things that program would fund. So we even, as the request was coming in, had asked ourselves, could we just, look at that as, something we could fund through that program? Could they apply? How would we do that? And ultimately, at the end of the day, we probably felt it was more appropriate just to separate them and say, yeah, there is a workforce component, but this one's very unique. It probably is more aligned with what we do with our partners at Downtown Sioux Falls, other Development Foundation, et cetera. So to structure it in our budget a little bit more that way, where that particular entity, within the budget has some dedicated funding resources.
All right, thank you. And I do think, they offer a very unique type of educational component to our community that we don't have, and that other research parks are just going like gangbusters. And to have that in our community and have high-paying, good jobs into the health system that we have here is huge. So thank you for clarifying those questions.
Seeing no other,
You said.
I know.
If I can, I should probably just stay away and let it end. But I think it is important just to clarify. Brent did a really good job on that, but I wanted to just mention that Councilor Jameson on the workforce development. A couple things I think are important to add here is procedurally, we would actually see it functioning just like it did last year. You appropriate the dollars, we build the program and execute that. But I think it's fair to say we work probably more closely with you as a group than we have on anything else. We would like to continue that. One of the things we struggled with a little bit, frankly, was putting the dollars in the mayor's recommended budget, again, for workforce development, because initially last year we talked about getting the program in place as early as possible so we may have some results by this time to help us make a decision. And as Brent mentioned, we got things off the ground as quickly as we could. I think the groups that were awarded dollars did the best they could to put things in place quickly. We're starting to see initial results. Probably not enough just yet, though, to be anything more than optimistic or encouraged. But as Councilor Erpenbach knows, a short time after the announcement of the awards, I did visit with her and Councilor Anderson Jr. and I think Councilor Kiley at the announcement, and was looking for a little advice from them on what do you think the sense of the council is to include it in the mayor's recommended and figure it out as we go through the process at this time, or to not have it in and then do much like we did last year where you'd look at amending. And I think the strong response was, please include it in the budget, the proposed budget, and then we'll see where we are in August and September with the program, and we'll go through the process and decide, keep it, take it out, or at what level. And then with the USD, the Discovery District Research Park, it was a late request. It's also a nice opportunity because the state, as I understand it, has offered $300,000 if the local community will match it. Forward Sioux Falls has agreed to be half of the local match at $150,000. And so as we looked at that, that's something we certainly think the city should be involved in supporting. And we believe, based on the program this year for workforce development and what we would anticipate next year, if we do the program again, we think demand will be lower and different. And so we believe if we do keep the workforce development program in place and fund it, that $300,000 to $350,000 would be ample or sufficient. And then we could take those remaining $150,000 and put them in the budget as an amendment and make a specific line item. So then Rich Nazer and his group can show the state there's an actual line item right in the budget And I think that would assist them as well in securing those state dollars. So that was kind of the thought process with all of that.
Okay, hearing no other questions, I'm going to ask a couple. Brent, you mentioned the possibility or part of your commitment is to be out calling on businesses that are in Sioux Falls, encouraging them and talking to them about, what are your plans? Where do you want to expand? Are you going to expand? What can we help you with, et cetera, et cetera. I know that the foundation is doing the same kind of thing, and I would urge you to work with them on it.
Absolutely.
You don't want two people, in fact, two people calling at the same time might be okay, but you don't want one a week after the other. Secondly, as I'm going to say again, working on this increased focus on business or recruitment and workforce development, to work with the state and with the foundation and the chamber on this, because if we start doubling up on stuff, it's not gonna be good for anybody. Right. And someone might be a little irritated. I don't know if it's lastly, it appears to me you've got, you spent $440,000. We've gotten 20 jobs out of that so far?
That's our results to date, is actual jobs, yeah.
That's what I said, so far. Or is that from the Sioux Falls Has Jobs, we've gotten 20?
No, that's from the workforce program, and we anticipate about 400 participants. The enrollment to date, I think, was 80, and then 20 have been placed.
Okay,
so far.
Okay,
yeah.
so it's coming along, because those are awfully expensive placements. I think we might be better to, go to some people out in Detroit or wherever might need a job as a welder or something, and offer them a $25,000 bonus to come to South Dakota. They could make a down payment on a house and be very happy here. Might get a lot more than 20 real quick.
Yeah, no, that 400's our goal.
Okay. I'm real tempted to say something about Councilor Staggers at this point, but I won't. Now watch my phone will ring. See, I know what it was. On the initiatives, partnership and initiative, no, that wasn't it. There it is right there. I'm sorry, on the operating budget. Your first line there, under pass-through funds, Convention Visitors Bureau lodging tax, 544, down 3 lines to lodging occupancy tax. Are they exactly the same thing?
They're different. They're different, yeah. The one at the bottom there, lodging occupancy tax, was really kind of an add-on to the existing downtown district.
Okay,
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure that we're in that. Okay,
Yep.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chair?
Are there, yes?
If I could just respond to something that you were talking about with the workforce development piece. I'm concerned that we're looking at just 20 jobs when we think about there were 8 applicants and that really only one program has gotten off the ground, and they already have 20 job placements. To me, that's remarkable. In just the few months they've really been going. I think the other piece to understand is that one of those is actually a school, that they haven't started school yet, and so we need to be realistic about this money. I just want to express my support for this program to continue, whether it's at the full 500 or if we kind of wiggle things around with the discovery zone or whatever. But I think that we need to be realistic too in that if we decide it did bomb, I mean, it hasn't so far. There's no proof that anything bombed. No. But if we decide it didn't work, we just don't spend the money. You know, it would be far easier to just not spend the money than to scramble on the 1st of March and go, you know what, we really should do that program. Where can we find that money? I think we should go ahead and keep it in the budget and move forward with it.
Well, I agree with you. I just want to, I want to make sure that we hold people accountable also.
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
That's my whole point.
Yep. I'm worried that people are going to hear just 20 jobs, and I'm thinking that's a lot of jobs in a really short period of time.
If I said it that way and it sounded that way, that wasn't what I meant, because I know that a lot of these projects are just barely off the ground or not even started, and but eventually we gotta know what the results are.
Right. And if I could add, there's an accountability piece. So that 440 has not been spent. It's really been allocated, and there's benchmarks and markers that have to happen along the way.
Super.
For that funding to go out.
Good. You got to say one more thing.
Well, I
don't
have
you?
one more thing that came to me. It's not actually not about this, but it's something that Les is involved with affordable housing. If I could just bring it up. I did hear this morning in a meeting that the home funds are in danger, the federal home dollars. And I guess, Les, I'd just like to fire the first shot over the bow in terms of our congressional delegation needs to understand how much we rely on the federal home funds and how important they are to Sioux Falls. If you could kind of address that. I know it's off the top of your head, I apologize, but if you could talk about that.
That's all right. I've seen cuts, but this is probably one of the more draconian approaches to it, at least the Senate version. Now, we all know it's going to go back and forth. There's going to be the House, the Senate committee, so on and so forth. And the exact numbers, I'm sorry, escape me right off the top of the head, but we're talking about the difference between $200, $300, $400, $500 million and like 18,000. It's just the proportions are so far off, and I can't quote the numbers. I can get them to you rather than giving you something that isn't accurate. Home funds, for example, that homeless program that we have where we start dealing with the homeless families, you know, that's going to go right out the window. And there's that old saying, the biblical injunction, don't give them fishes, teach them how to fish. That's what that's really all about. And so without that program, there's one program that goes right, by the way, without the home funds. And we also use it in a number of different areas, and it is critical to what's going on. We've been doing some things with getting information out to people. Would urge you to do the same. We can supply you with some talking points if you'd like that.
Well, if I might, the information that I have is that it would be, what's proposed right now is a 93% cut to what the state of South Dakota gets. It comes out to about $3.2 million. For Sioux Falls alone, it's more than $1 million in cuts. And this is an affordable housing, a homeless program, as you're talking about. And then the other thing that I would ask council, and I will be asking council, and I'll be working with the administration and with the mayor too, that we will, I hope, support drafting letters and having communication with our congressional delegation. They need to understand the importance of these programs to the people in this community, and that this need is not getting smaller, and to make that kind of cut is...
Keeps growing.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent point. Thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you. I apologize for not bringing it up earlier. Thank you.
I have one last question for Tracy, as long as you're here. Well, you know, you've been sitting back there so quiet all the time. I figure I got one question. I was in going through the budget process. I see in the back the pension plans, both the fire and the regular pension plan that Sioux Falls is in charge of, its responsibility for. Are we fully funded on those?
The pension plans, and it's in your comprehensive annual report in the following the financial statements in that report. There's a schedule that gives you kind of the history of the funding. I'd have to go from memory, but I believe the latest report would indicate that the funds are funded somewhere around 85%, which is very, very good by comparison to almost every other plan in the country. And there are some things that are still rolling out in terms of reforms that will have a very positive impact on that, and that's something that will take place over the next year or two.
Okay. I'll talk to you
Okay.
offline
Be
on
happy
the rest
to.
of that. Any other? Meeting is adjourned.